Good morning and welcome back to the next talk at Hope. This talk is actually a panel discussion, and we have with us three gentlemen to talk about their backgrounds in hacking, their backgrounds in cybersecurity, and how they've built a career in IT security. With us in the room, we have Orson Mosley, Naz Markuta, and Tom Krantz. And I'm going to let each of them give you a quick introduction to themselves. So without further ado, Orson.
Cool. Yeah, so the first question is really about our background, so I might as well start with that. So I first started really playing with computers when I was about 12 or 13 years old. I had a desktop PC and I had Windows XP. And at some point, I found out about Linux. And it sounded really cool. It was open source. It's the first time I'd really come across that type of stuff. So I downloaded that, stuck it on a CD, and had it as my main operating system for a few years. And then when I was about 14 or 15, I saved up and I got my own laptop. And at that point, I downloaded a Linux distro straight away. And this time was Arch Linux. And I had fun playing with that because it was one where you download it, you partition your hard drive, you select how much swap space you want, you configure your networking, and you install whatever you want on it. So you kind of installed it from the ground up, and I used to find that really fun. And that was the period where I sort of viewed my computer more as kind of a toy or a plaything, where it didn't really matter if I destroyed my entire operating system or I had to reinstall everything. Just part of the learning process, and I really liked learning the tools and the way things worked. And then when I was about 16 or 17, I first started to get into programming. So I did kind of try a bit before that. I think I tried with C++ and maybe Python a bit, but I never really got into those because it was very abstracted for me, and I really wanted to understand how computers worked at a low level. So I thought I'd go all the way back to the 80s and 90s and learn about CPUs back then. So I started learning about the Z80, and I read a brilliant book by Rodney Zacks on programming for Z80. So I set that up and had that as my environment. And then I got quite interested in malware. I found Frack online, I found the ezine. I got quite interested in malware. So again, another really good book is The Giant Black Book of Viruses. And the Zen of Assembly Language by Michael Abrash. Those were kind of two of my favorite books. And at that point, I got into writing malware for DOS. So learning about the 8088 and 8086 and doing that. And I found that really fun. And as well, when I was a kid, I really loved playing with my Game Boy Advance and my Game Boy. So it was always kind of a dream of mine to write something for Game Boy or the Game Boy Advance. So I got into assembly language as well, just to program stuff on my Game Boy Advance. So I found that quite fun. And then eventually I needed a job. My parents said I needed a job. So I went for an interview somewhere and explained to them sort of my passion, what I've been up to. I hadn't gone to uni, but so I was really into all this stuff. And yeah, they took me on, and I've been working there ever since. I've kind of dipped my hands in various things like red teaming, pen testing, those sorts of things. And recently I've gone back to the low level stuff, so kind of hacking, kernel hacking, that kind of thing. So yeah, that's it for me.
Naz, how about you?
So yeah, I kind of started off around 12 and 13, same as Orson. I mostly was like trying to bypass at school, like certain content filtering stuff. So I would like try to get some proxies, access gaming websites and Flash websites as well. I got kind of bored of that, moved on to something like live booting distros like Knoppix and Backtrack, if you can remember that. Got familiar with the command line, started to play around with Unix systems, configuring certain installations, environments. We actually got internet quite late at our home. So I was mostly spending time after school on the internet with my bypassed kind of proxy and looking at certain sites, and was learning from there. And after we got some internet at our house, I learned a bit about Wi-Fi hacking and how to crack web and stuff like that. Had a few kind of tutorials that I was following. I remember looking at a video on YouTube about, I think the channel was called Hack5, if I'm not mistaken. And so, yeah, I built this weird antenna thing that I put outside my window when I was about, 14, 15. And yeah, that was pretty awesome. Hacked loads of wireless networks around the area. Web was the go-to standard. And,
I've been out of the UK for a number of years, but I'm trying to recall, do you have Pringles cans you were using, or what kind of camera?
Yes. That was actually quite hard to come by, to be honest. But when I did, I had convinced my parents to get me a Belkin USB Wi-Fi adapter. So it was small enough I can fit into the, if I cut out a little hole and a wire plugged into my computer. That was quite hilarious. After that, I signed up to a few hacking forums online, learned a bit about web application security, did some stuff on botnets, learned how they work, tried to follow a few more guides, written my own tutorials as well. A few months later, I started to hack random websites in my spare time, like really late at night, or it would be like something that I would see on TV, like an advert, and I would think, let's poke around, see what we can find. And one good example was a used mobile phone kind of reselling service. So you just send them your old mobile phone, and they'll send you some cash back or something. And this particular one had a search bar, and being me, I just typed some random queries in it, and apparently it was vulnerable to SQL injection, which was quite interesting at the time. So yeah, I thought that was awesome, and just start to learn more, start to test other websites. Fast forward a few more months or years, I rather than registering to other hacking forums, I created my own hacking forum. I also hosted a instant chat Jabber server. And that was quite cool. It was based on prodigy.im, I think. Although this talk said that we bypass university, I actually went to university, but I did study computing. Just want to point that out. And maybe I think it was my second year, I got arrested by the NCA, and then I got charged. A few months later, I ended up getting sent to prison for it, which was probably the worst time of my life, to be honest. After that, after I was released, I tried to look for jobs. It was really difficult to find. Most of them required security clearance, which for me was like almost impossible to get unless it was spent. But the spent time was like 4 to 5 years anyway. I got really lucky. I landed a job at the company I currently work for now. And funny thing is, Tom and Orson did the interviews, which is quite awesome. I think that's really great. Some of the stuff I do now involves like hardware hacking. So we had this router that we took apart, found a bunch of bugs in it. There's another like a Chinese brand 4G kind of a router, a modem or something like that. We also did some building phishing campaign infrastructure. So like create a phishing simulation basically for the red teamers. I did a bit of work on 4G and 5G. I was really curious about IMSI catching and developing like your own base station. I thought that was pretty awesome. Did a few conferences, just regular, not that very at a very high level about web application security and OWASP top 10. And yeah, that's about me.
All right, super. So you were all working together, at least at one point. I don't know whether you still are to some extent, but Tom, why don't you give us a quick update on your background and who you are?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. Luckily, my webcam's not very good, so you can't see much of the grey, but I'm old. I'm really old. I got started when I was 10 years old back in 1984. So back in the UK, the government had this great idea. They'd team up with the national broadcaster and launch this campaign, a national campaign for IT literacy. And they generated the BBC Micro, hands down the best computer ever in the history of mankind. And every school had a BBC Micro. Every student was taught how to program, how to code. And the idea was the UK would become this coding powerhouse that would rule the world. For me, it meant my dad, who was a teacher at the time, came home one day with a BBC Micro and a tape deck and a huge, thick manual and a modem, and basically slapped it down on the kitchen table and said, oh, apparently you're supposed to learn how to do this. Off you go. Left me to it. Had to teach myself how to program just to get the thing working. Got into breaking copy protection on games, because for a 10-year-old, the cost of games then was outrageously expensive. And I also wanted to make backup copies of my favorite games, so my younger brothers and my dad didn't overwrite my saves on them. Got into that a bit more and then started to explore the features of the modem. Found out local BBSs, which is always good for a laugh. And at the time, the national telecommunications company, BT, ran a system called Prestel, which was a bit like AOL for the 80s. They had this cool thing called email, and it cost a fortune. You had to pay for your local phone call to dial it up. You had to pay a fortune for subscription. And I was desperate to get in on that. The Prime Minister had an email address on Prestel. Prince Charles had an email address on Prestel. I was desperate to get in. So I spent ages trying to brute force passwords. Eventually managed to guess the password used by some of the BT engineers that gave me full access, set myself up with a mailbox, sent some really great emails to Margaret Thatcher, the Prime Minister at the time, which luckily didn't land me in too much hot water. And then got busted when my dad came home one day and wanted to work out what on earth I was doing logged into Prestel at 5 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. So the modem got taken away. I got grounded for a bit. But luckily where I grew up was right in sort of the tech corridor of southern England. So we had Silicon Graphics, we had Sun Microsystems, we had ICL, we had IBM, we had Cray. They're all a local phone call away, which meant cheap late night BBSing. So I spent really the rest of my teenage years breaking into local computer companies and then emailing their sysops and saying, look, guys, you've got no password on the admin for your Silicon Graphics cluster, or Cray YMP, actually, I got access to as well. The Cray guys were pretty chill about that. I got some free manuals. Off the back of that, I managed to land a summer holiday doing PC and networking support that got me into Novell NetWare, if any of you are old enough to remember that. And where I was working had a bunch of Unix systems as well. I mentioned that I got experience with Unix. That got me into Sun Solaris and Silicon Graphics IRIX in a kind of hardcore way, and then I moved into system administration. And all the way through that sort of progression, as I went from looking after systems to designing systems to building systems, I deployed a bunch of high-performance computing supercomputers using Sun and Silicon Graphics gear back in the late 90s, early 2000s. But all the way through that, I seemed to be the only person in the corporate environment who was trying to break this stuff, who kept on flagging up and saying that there's a security issue here. Why haven't we locked down that? Why is this process running? So kind of almost by accident, as I got more seniority looking after Unix systems and then migrating into cloud and building out solution architecture, I was always the person who was tagged as the security person. So gradually moved into a security career, moved into doing security architecture, so moving from actually administering machines through to designing machines through to implementing their security and their large-scale architecture, and then basically end up as a CISO and a director, which is where I am now. The previous company I worked at, as Naz mentioned, that's where I met Orson and Naz, and I can remember seeing Naz's CV come through and his name ring a bell and thinking, I know him, I've read about him when he got busted, let's get him in for an interview. It was a great interview, really, really good to chat. And obviously the company hired Naz and he's still there, which is to their credit, to be honest.
Excellent. Well, nice to meet you all. And I'm sure our viewers are saying the same thing. So let's explore that a little bit more. And, but before we dive into sort of full rounds of questions, I just want to come back at the commentary there in the background discussion of, you know, we've got some folks coming up without university, some folks coming up with the criminal background. But when you look at the market today, what is your point of view as far as whether or not you need to have a degree, whether or not you need to have even, we got people nowadays talking about masters, cybersecurity degrees and things like that?
So I left school after sixth form, which for those of you in the US is equivalent to high school. Basically, I spent the majority of my time at school basically breaking into the school system and reducing the grades of the bullies. I got fed up of being pushed around. So there's a whole bunch of people out there. I very much doubt you're watching, but if you are, I'm the reason you flunked your GCSEs and A-levels. Bite me. I was an indifferent student, so when I left my A-levels, I had, quite frankly, mediocre and rubbish grades, and I didn't go to university at all. All the way through my career, I've not really had any training courses. I've taught myself. I've seen things and thought, oh, I want to find out how that works, and I've learned how to pull it apart, get to the guts of it, and then work out what to do with it. So now I'm in a sort of senior leadership position. I'm a CISO. I'm a director of a consulting company. I absolutely see no value at all, to be honest, in degrees or going to university. I get why people do it, but realistically, I'd much rather see someone who spent 4 to 6 years of their life trying to work out for themselves how something works, teaching themselves something because they're interested in it, rather than someone who's sat in a classroom and had this knowledge fed to them because they think it's the right thing to do. And certainly looking at some of the people I've hired, you know, the best people are the ones who are hackers. They've either got into trouble or they've skirted around the edges, but they've broken into systems. They've tried to work out how stuff works, and that gives them a sense of inquisitiveness, a sense of passion about the subject that really makes them really great security people and sets them up for a fantastic career in security.
Super. And I think you may be the only 10-year-old I've come across who wanted to email Prince Charles, but I'll ask you about what. But so as we look at, you know, folks who are maybe in your shoes from however many years ago, and looking at the environment today, what are the resources available online today to learn about cybersecurity and about hacking for folks that maybe can't get that from a more traditional academic forum?
Who's gonna go?
Go on, Naz, you take that one.
Cool. So yeah, there's plenty of open public web forums out there. Some are really good. InfoSec Institute is a really good one. I've learned tons of things from there. They have like really great categories that you can choose from. They have search functionality. So if you see something and you have interest in it, they're probably going to have it. GitHub's a really great resource. A lot of the times people post like awesome hacking resources, I think awesome OSINT. There's loads of kind of linking back to other sources of information, which is really nice. Reddit, of course, ask around people that are in the industry already. Definitely ask somebody. I mean, what's the worst that could happen? They could just reply, then not reply. There's also, I remember reading ExploitDB. So that usually the website is for like bugs, public. They show like what's the most recent bugs and shell codes and stuff like that. But they also have a category on papers and PDF documents. People have come up with tutorials and methodologies that let you.
You mentioned earlier that you got started with Backtrack. So was the offensive security crowd a lot of where you came from with that, or was there any other particular influences that you had?
Oh yeah, I remember. So it was quite pricey. So I remember torrenting a few videos about ethical hacking and offensive security guides and stuff like that. That definitely helped. But I really enjoyed reading e-zines, like these text files that show how hackers went about in their system, what they did, how they got there, what kind of credentials were posted, what they did with them and stuff like that. I thought that was really cool. There's also, if you do want to get into like web application testing or security in general, OWASP website is really, really good. They have really great examples. They have intentionally vulnerable applications such as WebGo, where you can just try out SQL injection, cross-site scripting, whatever. There's also VulnHub. They mostly have pre-configured vulnerable servers. And what's nice about it is you can just install Docker and get set up in minutes. So rather than setting up an environment in VirtualBox or something, you can just download Docker, download a vulnerable Apache version, and then start exploiting it. I think that's a really good way to learn. Some of the ones join certain sites, Over the Wire, Hack This Site. They have great challenges that you can do, as well as CrackMe's.
Hold, OBS crashed. Give me a second. Okay, you're live.
And we're back. Apologies for the audio video problem there, but I believe the streaming session is now back online, and hopefully everyone is reconnecting. And appreciate you trying to reconnect the stream there. So we're going to dive back in, and I think the next thing that we want to talk about, there's been a few questions on the Q&A channel. If you're not in Matrix, go to Matrix chat, throw your questions into Q&A. But a few questions around certifications. So I think the question here boils down to a few things, right? One is what certifications are relevant in your parts of the world. And I know obviously UK background, but I believe, Tom, you're now in Europe as well, right? And so what certifications are relevant there? Are certifications important? And in general, when you're looking at presenting these different backgrounds from a consulting standpoint, how do you showcase those skills to employers?
So for the certification question is an excellent one. There are definitely, when I'm looking at building out teams, which I've done for sort of the last 4 or 5 years now, there are certain certifications which are largely worthless. I'm going to be brutal. The certified ethical hacker, anything from the EC Council, you're paying money to be taught how to use tools. If you're interested in the work, you can find that out over a weekend playing on your own gear. Utterly valueless, a complete waste of money. Anyone who has gone for a specific certification rather than gone for experience, that shines through from the CV, and it really shines through from the interview. So my advice to people would always be, don't pursue certifications as the goal. Go for experience, understand the subject matter, and then get the certification as like the extra icing on the cake. I have a shed load of certifications. I've been in the industry now for almost 30 years. That's how old I am. I've got boatloads of stuff. I'm particularly proud of my Lotus CCMail certification. That's a job opener if ever I saw one. But certainly I've always used certifications as a way to break past the HR and the hiring manager doorways and get down to an actual interview where you can talk to someone who knows what they're talking about and knows what they're doing. I got the CISP, but I got that off the back of 10 years of security experience, and people were asking for it, and I thought, okay, it's an easy way to get past HR and the CV screening. Certainly when I'm hiring people, I'm always looking for where's the experience first, and then what certifications have they got to underline that they've got that experience, as opposed to someone with no experience who's got a whole raft of certifications. I'd say if you've got at least 5 or 6 years, the CISP is always a good one to have, because it just, it requires 5 years of experience, and if you've got the knowledge, why not sit the exam, right? It's easy to pass if you know what you're doing. OSCP is always good if you're doing pen testing. That's a standout one for me. Naz and Orson, you guys are a bit more hands-on at the moment. What are your views?
Yeah, so for me, I'd say it largely depends on the culture at the company, and also depends on what job you're applying for. So for example, if you're applying for a pen testing job, then having a CREST certification in web app hacking or infrastructure hacking is useful for the company, because they can go to a client and they can say, okay, well, we have a few members and they have this certification. So it's just kind of a baseline. But then you kind of, you know, sometimes people don't want to take certifications and they're the oddballs. There's the OSCP that Tom mentioned. I quite like that one because it's very practical. So instead of going in and taking multiple choice questions, you actually have to hack stuff for 24 hours. And only if you successfully capture the flags do you pass the exam. So I think that's a good one. And again, what type of job? So reverse engineering, I'm kind of into reverse engineering and that type of stuff. For me, I don't personally think there's that the certifications are that important in that aspect, because it's more about examples of what you've done. So for example, if you've reverse engineered PatchGuard on Windows, or you've hacked some game or console and you have that on GitHub and you have the code and you can explain it and you've written some blogs, for me, that's a lot more interesting than having a certification in reverse engineering.
Okay, thank you. And so, you know, we've got a few folks talking about this in the Q&A chat, and I think there's a very common refrain there, which is that these certifications are used for gatekeeping and to get past HR, and other than that, well, one guy says other than that, it's practically useless. I think what we're hearing from you is, other than that, maybe if you're going into it to learn something for the right reasons, it isn't useless. And you know, Tom, when you go out on your engagements now and you see the legacy Novell NetWare implementations, you know what to do. But so, you know, there was another question asked about degrees again, and you know, what degree and 4-year degree. I think we've kind of touched on that in general. But by the same token, when you're having conversations with your clients, Tom, how much of an uphill battle is it to convince them of this, or are they very receptive? We got some of the folks in the Q&A chat saying, we're from Fortune 100, you know, this is how we're feeling. Are there any segments of the market where you see it being a harder sell?
Good question. So I've done a lot of work with regulated environments, so government, financial services, research, R&D, critical national infrastructure as well. And to be honest, the biggest thing I hear from people is that they can't find people with the skills. And it's almost like certifications and degrees kind of take a back seat until they go to the hiring process, and then HR stick their oar in and say, oh, but everyone must have a degree, everyone must have this certification, that certification. So there's a bit of self-defeating gatekeeping going on by a lot of clients there. I'd definitely say when talking to clients and wanting to help them hire a team and build in a security team, that ends up being a fairly quick conversation about, well, you can hang around for the next 4 years and wait for this unicorn to come up who's got a master's in cybersecurity and a CISP and the OSCP and some SANS GX certifications and blah, 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 blah. And you won't be able to afford them because they'll be up to their eyes in debt having got that lot, and they'll want a shed load of money to come and work for you. Or you can hire people who know what they're doing, and you can build your own team that does the right things for you as a client, as opposed to what everyone else is doing in the industry. Personally, I've had a huge amount of success with that, building out teams of specialists who grow into their roles, but also provide the clients exactly the sort of skills they need. And more often than not, the key thing of that is that kind of hacker mindset, you know, critical thinking, problem solving, inquisitiveness. You know, that's stuff you can't really list on a CV that your job interview should be pulling out, and that definitely clients, once they understand this is a way for them to solve what they see as a skill shortage, they'll start hiring the right people as well.
No, absolutely. And so, you know, one of the other things that I think comes up time and again is around passion. And we've seen this on the Q&A chat that word was used there. And, you know, talk about what you've done, talk about what your passion is there for the field, rather than talking purely on experience and certifications. And so I'm going to ask this as kind of a two-part question, right? So first of all, do you feel like there is in fact any kind of shortage of resources, any kind of shortage of talent in the information security environment. And when you're looking at talent, how important is passion? Because I think there's been some debate back and forth over, is that a reasonable, equally back to the gatekeeping thing, right? Is it reasonable to require that somebody has passion, or is it fair just to say, you know what, come and do your day job and do your 9 to 5 or 8 to 6 or whatever it may be?
Good question. So I would certainly say that passion is important, because people think, oh, it's a job, it's a 9 to 5, I'm a chair warmer, I'm looking at alerts. The people who are attacking your organization or your client organizations don't work 9 to 5. Some of them are very, very sophisticated. They've got follow the sun attacking teams. If any of you are tangled with the PRC and the Chinese, and you've unfortunately come under attack from them, they've just got thousands of people they can throw at it, and they keep on going and going and going until they cause a breach. And if you're responding to a breach or a security incident, it doesn't stop just because it's reached 5 o'clock and everyone says, oh yeah, you know what, I'm going to go home now and have some tea. Some of the worst incidents I've dealt with when I was in financial services environments, they lasted for 30, 40 hours trying to work out what the root cause was, reach out to law enforcement and external teams and try and fix that sort of stuff. So having people who are genuinely interested in it is key, because that's the only thing that's going to drive them through a real world attack. And the other thing is that some of the paperwork is really tedious, to be honest. I know Orson has done a lot of red teaming and pen testing, and writing up the reports is a complete and utter ball ache afterwards. It's so boring, but it's a huge chunk of the work. And if you're not interested in the work, you're not going to push through that, oh, I've got to write a 50-page report about what I've been doing, I just want to get back to the fun stuff, And Orson, you've experienced that firsthand. What are your views?
Yeah, I wonder. So, sorry, could you repeat the?
I tell you what, I think something Tom brought up there is actually a fascinating question in its own right. As of now, where you are in your career right now, what is the fun stuff for you today?
The fun stuff for me today. So for me, kind of the process of learning is some of the fun stuff. So for me at the moment, I've just got into trying to write rootkit on Windows for the red team. So yeah, so
is it more about, for you, certainly you're saying there's an element of the exploration, the learning, the figuring out.
The creative side.
But is there also an element of that you are passionate about reducing company exposure, reducing company risk, or are you very much focused on you want to learn the tools and show them where the holes are?
Yeah, and I'm probably really bad. For me, it's just fun, like it's play. So if you can put me on something where I'm really passionate about, like low-level stuff or writing rootkits or writing tools for the red team, then I'll really do the best job possible.
So I'm going to put it to you, and I'm going to put it to Naz actually, because I appreciate your answer, Orson. So in fact, is the issue with passion not simply, does this guy have passion or not passion, like it's some kind of gatekeeper thing? Is it about making sure that people are applied where their passions lie and to the extent that their passions lie?
I think you can, like, if you get set a task that you're not passionate about, you immediately know that, oh, this is not right for me. But if, I don't know how to describe it. Maybe can you say in a different way, maybe?
Sure, absolutely. So I think what I'm asking is, if you take a person that you consider to be a great information security resource,
yep,
are they going to be equally great in all roles, or what determines which role they're going to shine in?
I'm not sure about that one, to be honest.
You have any thoughts on that?
So I think at the end of the day, it's a job, right? There's always going to be boring stuff. The question that we all have to ask ourselves is, how much of our working day is the boring stuff and how much of it is the interesting stuff? You know, I can put up with a couple of days worth of tedious meetings and report writing and strategy document, but if there's not something interesting, exciting after those 2 days, I've kind of lost interest. I'm sorry. It's just not fun anymore. And we've all got that like boredom threshold. We've all got that judging level thing where we go, okay, I'm being paid this much. That means I've got this much tolerance for some tedious meetings and some boring reports. But you constantly need to look at that because the job changes over time. You get more skilled, you get more experience. The people that you're working with and for, they get more experience. They use new technology. And so the nature of it is that it changes over time. And very often some people, I know it's happened to me, I've stopped there and thought, actually, is the work boring, or have I just gained enough knowledge and experience that actually I've outgrown this role? I need to look for something else. So certainly looking back on my career, there's lots of times where I've left safe, boring, well-played jobs just because I thought I'd outgrown it and I wanted to do something new and interesting and a bit kind of dangerous for me personally. So I think there's always that level of, you need to check in with yourself about why are you showing up on a Monday morning? And yes, Mondays suck, and Tuesdays and Wednesdays probably suck as well, and Friday can't come fast enough. But why is that? Is it because the job's boring, or is it because you've got too skilled for the environment you're working with and you need something new?
Super. One of the things we're getting a lot of questions about in the channel as well is back on this HR side of things and that gatekeeping. And you know, you have a question around how do you get past that, as well as you know, having gotten past that, is the return on investment for all of that credential gathering and degree gathering worth it? So, you know, I'll throw both of those thoughts out there at you and see what you're interested in there.
Yeah.
Sorry, Orson, go for it.
Yeah, so I suppose in terms of getting past HR, I suppose you could do some sort of open source intelligence and work out what the values are of the company. So if it's a company that values the passion and the work you've done before rather than the degree, then it'll be a lot easier to get into that company. For example, I was watching a live stream by GeoHots, who has the Comma AI self-driving car company. And he was talking about interviews for his company. And he was saying, you know, he's really into people with passion and people that have actually done it and coded. And that's what he would be looking for as a hacker. So I suppose finding the right companies where you can get through HR and or have someone reading the CVs that looks past that, you know, your certs or the degrees on it. I think that's important.
I mean, you can also, if they do have some sort of bug bounty program, you can try help them out. Get in contact with the security team if you can. Maybe look them up on Twitter. Reply to certain. I don't know, if you do find something, definitely do it in confidence. Don't just release it online like I was doing. And yeah, maybe that will get your foot in the door. You could also do other like bug bounties. Depends on if the company's a part of them too. But yeah, that's my opinion.
Yeah, I think increasingly in this day and age, there's lots of opportunities with the bug bounty programs to, even if it doesn't give you the direct foot in the door, it gives you the opportunity to exercise your skills and demonstrate experience that can get you that foot in the door. But yeah, one of the other things that one of the questioners was just commenting is you do need to work on social skills when you're looking to get into these companies. I don't see anyone wearing a hoodie right now, but there is a mentality of a hacker, of what a hacker is, and that mental image, right? How important are social skills for the careers you've chosen?
So I would say fairly important, but within limits. I'm on the autistic spectrum. Social skills are incredibly hard. but I've still managed to do just enough to get into sort of senior leadership roles. The thing is that when you're interviewing people, or when you want to build out a team, the thing that should be driving it is more about, does this person fit in well with the team and the culture that I'm building out? You know, when I interviewed Naz, I was instantly just like, yeah, okay, he's going to get really well with Orson, and between the two of them, we can build a really great team who could do some really, really good stuff. You know, are you going to take them down to Buckingham Palace and have a formal banquet? And do they know which knives and forks to use? Do they know the correct term to address senior leaders? Kind of doesn't matter at some level. I mean, if you're a pen tester, you're going to have to present the report, and that's going to have to go to the C-suite leadership team. You're going to have some sort of social skills. I mean, I've literally been with someone who has stood up in front of the board of a Fortune 250 company and said, "Shit's fucked, you've been hacked." And that was their pen test report. And it's like, dude, you're right. Okay, that's great. But you can't say that.
All that work down the drain, right?
Totally and utterly. They're just like, thank you very much. That's very informative. There's the door. Goodbye. But, you know, it's certainly for things like interviews, I think it's really important to be yourself. And touching back on, you know, getting past HR and getting into the interviews and things, I'd always say it's a two-way process, right? If you are yourself in an interview, or you're yourself on your CV and you don't get the job, that's not you being turned down. That's you dodging a bullet. You've managed to avoid working for a company where you wouldn't feel happy doing. I've been really blatant about leaving jobs because they hired people and I couldn't work with them, or walking away from interviews because I didn't feel comfortable working for that client. I interviewed with Google many years ago and got to the final offer and turned them down because the people who interviewed me were absolutely terrible human beings, and I just didn't want to work with them at all. It doesn't matter how great your social skills are, you can't hide that level of not fitting into the culture.
So it sounds like you have a clear code of ethics of your own, but have you ever found that something like the CISP code of ethics has been constraining, or has guided you to do something that you might not otherwise have done?
So there's some weirdos in the CISP code of ethics, particularly. And it touches over into sort of the history of, you know, Naz, for example. It came up in an interview. You know, the stuff he's done that he got caught for and he had to serve time for is stuff I've done and didn't get caught for because there were no laws about it. There was stuff that other people in the interview did on behalf of the government and actually got rewarded for it. So all of this stuff is all about, you know, perspective. And I think regardless of formal codes of ethics or those appalling company statements of culture, company values, do you live up to the Amazon 12-point company values? All of that stuff's nonsense, right? Be yourself, be true to yourself, do what you think is right. If that lands you in trouble, then it's a sign that you are not suited to work in that environment or with those people. And there are plenty of other companies out there who will work with you and who will reward you for being you. I don't know, Naz, how you found it.
Yeah, obviously at my interview, I was really nervous. I don't really, to be honest, have any social skills whatsoever. I get asked like to come out for drinks and stuff, and I just constantly say, "Oh, no, I'm doing something else, thanks though." But I think I'm really lucky to have this role that I work in the lab, kind of away from everybody else, and it's no like consultation or anything like that. I don't really have to talk to clients and stuff, but at the same time, it's good to be thrown in there once in a while. Like, for example, like this talk right now, like I'm still kind of struggling with the you know, being on the public eye, but who cares? It's a good experience for us. Yeah.
Super. We had a questioner in the channel asking, is it better to be a captain than an admiral?
What does that mean?
Oh, come on, dude. Have you not watched Star Trek? I think that's a great question. I'm totally with Kirk on this. When he resigned his admiralship to remain a captain, so he could still command the Enterprise. I would always personally, and I'd encourage other people as well, is walk away from the fancy job titles if it means doing something you don't enjoy. Yeah, I'm lucky that I can do the strategy work during the day, and then I get home and it's time to get my freak on and start hacking on my own kit, because I've got like 30 years worth of old kit that I've built up and lugged around from house to house. But yeah, if I was ever faced with a role that meant I could never do any hands-on hacking, I'd walk away from it. I don't care how much money there is involved. It's life's too short for that sort of stuff. And maybe there are some people out there who would go, you know what, I'll take the really tedious stuff and I'll take the money and I'll keep quiet about it, and fair play to them. You know, we're all different, but it gets back, I think, to what I was saying earlier on about, you know, are you doing what's true to you? Are you doing what's right to you? Because if you are, you're always going to have a good career. You're always going to be happy about it.
Yeah, for me, it's, are you working to live or living to work? Yeah, for me, it's really important that the process of what I'm doing, in terms of, you know, when I wake up in the morning and I go to work, that it's kind of relatively enjoyable and that it's a fun process, rather than having an end goal where, you know, I want to have £1 million and I want to be retired, but I have a terrible kind of, the process is terrible. For me, it's kind of about enjoying what's happening in the moment, your everyday. So yeah, for me, it would be just following the passion rather than the money or the job title.
Yeah, I have to agree with Orson. Just follow your passion. I love what I do, and it's always interesting. I'm always learning. That's what I really like about this job. It lets me learn what I want, and at my own time as well. So if I want to learn something about mobile exploitation, I can dedicate some time. And if I was somewhere higher up, I wouldn't have the ability to do that, because I'll be managing people or turning this direction of the company or something like that. I don't know. I don't think that's worth it for me.
Yeah, I think that's the problem as well. Is a lot of companies are really rushed. You know, they want to get to the end product, and you know, there's 3 weeks to do it, and the 3 weeks have been decided by someone that's non-technical, and then you're kind of rushing through things, and then you get to the end product, and then it doesn't work, and then it's fucked, and then, you know, loads of money is wasted. So I think there's definitely value in spending, you know, spending time thinking about stuff and letting people kind of go off piste a bit and explore and you know, find something that might be useful during their everyday work.
It's been an interesting conversation for me, because I feel like we've gone from talking specifically about security, whether you want to call it information security or cybersecurity or whatever, and ended up talking about, you know, life and what a job should be. So thank you for all the ground you've covered. I think that's really great. We've got only a couple of minutes left. And what I'd like to do is just go around each of you and see if there's anything that you wanted to say that you didn't get a chance to say with any of the questions that were posed. So why don't we just take it in reverse order from the last question. Naz, you have any last comments?
I don't know, really. I don't even remember the last question. What was it?
No. I'm saying if there's anything else you had to throw in there. Awesome. Why don't you? Do you have anything you want to throw in, or we can come back to Naz maybe?
Yeah, no, it'd be fun to get onto the chat and chat with some people after. So I'll do that.
Absolutely. And I see the screens absolutely just started taking off and scrolling past now. So I think there are some folks that want to talk to you afterwards on there, and you can move that to the hallway conversation as well. So thank you for that. Tom, any thoughts?
Just an appeal to anyone who's thinking about working in the security industry within IT. Start building your portfolio. Start building a list of stuff that you've been doing that is really interesting. It doesn't matter if it works. It doesn't matter if it's complete. Even if it's just you attended some conferences like this and you spoke to some people, put it down somewhere. Maybe a separate document to your CV. Maybe stick it on the end of your CV, but something that shows this is what I'm doing and this is why I'm interested in it, because that stuff stands out a mile. It's a giant shining beacon to people like me who are trying to hire good people and give good people good careers. So you know, there's loads of stuff out there to get stuck into. There's open source projects, there's conferences like this. You know, you don't even need to have a completed body of work. Some of the best talks I've heard at conferences are people who tried to solve something or find out how something worked and didn't. And you get to the end of their talk an hour later and they're kind of like, and I still don't know how this stuff works or how to fix it. But their journey and their exploration of that stuff is hugely, hugely interesting, and it's really valuable for other people. So, you know, get talking with people, get stuck into projects, do your own thing, join in with others. Everyone always needs help. Everyone needs new opinions, new points of view. So do that and then build up your sort of stuff, because that's a fantastic thing that will really stand you in good stead getting into and then building a career in the industry.
Awesome. And thank you again to each of you for coming and presenting at Hope, even if it was virtual. We will.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.